it feels like this is a Chiefs team that's kind of been flirting with disaster. All season long, they've played in these close games. Every single one of their wins have come at 7 points or fewer. So I think eventually the pendulum has to swing. Maybe they don't lose this game outright, but Jenks, again, I am going to be on the Saints getting the 5.5. Do you care to talk me off of this?
No, I like the Saints here. And I don't necessarily think you never bet against one player just because the market will catch up. And it's a roller coaster. Like even with the Chiefs, it has been a roller coaster. What was it, 3 years ago where they were awesome against the number, and then Vegas caught up and they were terrible against the number. And so you were winning money betting against the Chiefs. Now it's kind of swung in the other direction where you're making money betting on the Chiefs again. But now, at some point, Vegas will catch up, the numbers will catch up, and the pendulum will swing back the other way. That's sort of the way it works, right? Because if it stays in one direction, you're going to keep making money, and that's just not going to happen in sports wagering. It's too difficult to do. I like the Saints here. I like the Saints a lot. I think this is way too many points, and I need to look at the exact trends that we've seen this season, but we've seen a lot of live dogs. We saw a lot of upsets yesterday. We continue to see that in the NFL, and dogs getting more than 5.5 points have been covering at an astronomical rate this season. I need to find out the exact percentage. But if you look at the Chiefs, they haven't been as explosive as we've seen in years past, and a lot of that has to do with injuries right now, with Isaiah Pacheco being out, Rashee Rice being out, and ultimately this comes down to what I think is going to be a defensive-minded game, because for all the talk about Patrick Mahomes, and he is as good as it gets, it's the Chiefs' defense that has helped win games for Kansas City, and that goes back to last season as well. These guys on the defensive line like Chris Jones and Steve Spagnuolo and the job he has done in Kansas City, it doesn't get the attention, and I understand why, but it's really been the one thing that Kansas City has always been able to rely on. And when your offense isn't as explosive, they keep you in games. And we've seen closer games for the Chiefs. Also, conversely, when you look at New Orleans, Dennis Allen was promoted as defensive coordinator, and he's a guy who is defensive-minded as well. So when I see two defensive minds sort of going at it, then it makes me think the under is the call, and I think the Saints can keep this within the numbers. So I'm with you on New Orleans.
Yeah, I think when you talk about the Chiefs defense, this is what still kind of scares me about taking the points with the Saints, because the one matchup that I think that could be a problem for us that are on the Saints is that Chris Jones will be lined up against a third string center for the Saints. They're down to their third stringer. Anytime you have any type of weakness on the offensive line, it usually doesn't go well when you're lined up against Chris Jones, one of the premier defensive tackles in the NFL. So maybe they can get some pressure on Derek Carr. I always want to say David Carr. Derek Carr. And we know he's not the most mobile of guys. So I think that maybe goes into your underplay. If you do like the under here, it's a pretty low total, though, set at 43. I don't really have a good read on this total. Like, I know you said something to the effect of the under, and I think looking at both these defenses, you can probably make a really strong case. But I also hate playing unders when we have teams that have explosive play ability. Surprisingly so, it hasn't really been the Chiefs so far this season. If you look at like yards per attempt, Patrick Mahomes is not one of the leaders in the NFL, which we kind of expected to see. Now they added guys like Xavier Worthy, but the receiver depth just isn't there right now. Rashee Rice is out. Hollywood Brown is still out. I don't know how that translates in this game. So let me ask you this. Do we think Travis Kelce sees a bigger workload in this game? Last week, we saw little flashes of maybe the old Travis Kelce resurfacing. Do you think he has a big game here?
I would say, I mean, it's certainly possible. He was much better last week, and I think we all sort of agree that, you know, whatever the reasons are for his slow start, that eventually, whether it's being out of shape, whether it's being distracted, whatever that is, he's just too good of an athlete, and he has too good of a quarterback, and then a head coach / offensive mastermind in Andy Reid not to get him involved at some point. But I think just because, by virtue of the fact that the Chiefs are so banged up right now, it wouldn't surprise me to see Travis Kelce have a huge game, because ultimately he has that chemistry with Patrick Mahomes that goes back a long time. And now it's not just by choice. It's almost by necessity. I mean, the Chiefs do have weapons, but certainly no one like a Travis Kelce on the roster. So if Kansas City is going to go to anyone in this game, it's probably going to be him.
Yeah, last week he had 9 targets, led the team by far. And you're right, Patrick Mahomes is running out of options. So maybe Travis Kelce has a bigger game. Here, as far as props go, I was looking at the running back room and I'm trying to decide if it's going to be Kareem Hunt. It looks like he has taken running back number one duties. Last week had 14 carries, 69 yards, averaging almost 5 yards per carry. I will say this is not the easiest matchup against the Saints, but I think we're getting a pretty low number for Kareem Hunt this week. I think it's under 50. So I think I would be leaning there. A lot of it will depend on game script, though. If the Chiefs are playing from behind, which this line suggests that they will not be, I still think this is a pretty good play. I think we'll see some sort of ball control from both of these teams because we know the Saints love to run the football. Alvin Kamara is seeing a resurgence. And I think the Chiefs will counter by doing a lot of the same. When you have half the receivers on the injured list, I think we see. I know it's a matchup where you're looking at both the quarterbacks. I wouldn't be surprised if both teams try to run the ball a little bit.